Well, hello everyone. It's week 2 of our course together, and we are going to do the overview now. This is how we're going to do it in a PowerPoint presentation. So let's get started. Okay, everyone. This is the format of the week overview. It's going to be divided up into 2 segments. The first one is a new fun segment, at least I hope for you, is called The Week in the History of American Politics. It's a fun little glimpse into an event that is on an anniversary of the week that we're in. Could be long past, could be a few years ago, but we're going to take a look at it, and I'll give you some information and perhaps a little fun things for you. But know that this is not a graded thing. You will not receive a grade or be responsible to know the information. The only thing I would say is that some of these will be in your readings in your textbook on your Connect. Now, remember this. Your grades, when it comes to quizzes and tests, are based on your readings, okay? And your discussions are based on the lectures. So let's remember that, and I'll be saying that over and over to let you know. And because this week is your first subjective graded post for the discussions, but we'll go over that in a little bit in a few slides. The overview of the week will also be covering reviewing the assignments and events of the upcoming week each week that we post this. Could be some tidbits of information that you need to know, could be an update, could be anything that you need to know for the week coming up. All right, so I beg you to watch these just in case there are some updates or anything like that. So we'll go on to the next slide then. Okay, everyone, welcome to our first segment of the history of American politics this week. I'll be providing some information to look at events that happened during the week of our course in American politics. Boy, that first paragraph is ugly, and I really should show up to rehearsal to get things edited correctly. For that, I apologize. Okay, so for this week's event is one of the most controversial of all the amendments added to the United States Constitution. There is even a movement to validate this amendment and to remove it from the Constitution. So, what is it? Well, let's find out. It is the 14th Amendment. The passage of the 14th Amendment happened in 1868 on July 9th, and it is the second of the Reconstruction Amendments. The first one is the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. Then we have the 14th Amendment, which is second. And then the third one and final is the 15th Amendment, which gave voting rights for black men. Notice I put black men because black women will not get the vote until the 19th Amendment, and it's not passed until 1919. So to be a little bit, to give you some information and some food for thought, the most oppressed person in the United States from the passage of the 15th Amendment to the passage of the 19th Amendment, socially and politically, are black women. They do not have the right to vote. They don't have the right to speak informally in their voices through the ballot box. So it's something to think about, and and although women hadn't had that, white women didn't have it either. They did have some avenues, of course, that African American women did not have. So that's worth thinking about. Now we're going to divide the 14th Amendment up into 2 things that we need to be aware of. The Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause. Now, all levels in the Due Process Clause, All levels of American government must operate within the law and provide fair procedures. Now, here's where there's some pushback with a lot of people who'd like to do away with the 14th Amendment, and that is that this part of the amendment is redundant because it is mentioned in the Fifth Amendment. And I put a quote in there at the bottom. In the Fifth Amendment, it says, "Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law." Now, we always think of the Fifth Amendment as someone sitting in a courtroom and saying, "I refuse to testify against myself," which is absolutely part of the Fifth Amendment. But the Fifth Amendment is pretty full of some rights that citizens have when it comes to the legal system. And this is one of them, that the due process clause. We are all entitled to due process when we are in court, or when we are in a legal situation, or in a situation where we are describing or making an outcry for our liberties. We all have due process to go through the courts and the legal system to be heard. So, let's remember the Due Process Clause. Also, in the 14th Amendment is the Equal Protection Clause. This is very, very important, and we're starting to live part of the problems that are being created through one of the reasons that this part of the amendment was put in. And it's basically a governmental body may not deny people equal protection of its governing laws. Now, this is passed post-Civil War. It's passed post the end of slavery, and it's where ex-slaves and their descendants are being oppressed mostly in the defeated old Confederacy, where they're starting black codes, starting special laws for people to have dealing with African Americans, ex-slaves. And so this is put in to say that you can't do that, that every citizen has equal protection. Now, in the mid to late 1960s, this becomes a rallying cry for the civil rights movement. And they do get some things done. In 1968, the Civil Rights my goodness, I've vaporlocked. The Civil Rights Act is passed. So, but we have a situation now with voting rights being re-looked at, excuse me, of a lot of things that in the old Civil Rights Act are being looked at and being chipped away. So it's something we need to think about. But you're going to be reading about the 14th Amendment in your textbook reading in the next, I'd say 2 weeks, I believe, but I'm not sure on that, but you'll see it. Okay? All right, everybody, just a little glimpse into our what on this date in American political history. Okay? Well, let's move on. Okay, one of the most important things we have right now for our class is the discussions through week 2, from week 2 through week 6. Now, we're going to look at the requirements for those posts. You are to post your thoughts on a lecture and then respond to one student's post. And it's due on the Sunday at 11:59 of the discussion week, which means that this Sunday at 11:59 you need to have posted your assessment in the discussion page, and then you have to search out a fellow classmate and comment on theirs. You only have to comment on one. You don't have to comment on everyone's. Just one, okay? Now, your post must be at least 150 words concerning the lectures of the discussion week. I'm not locked into that maximum of 150, but you have to have at least 150 words. And if you want to go over, I have no problem with that, but be careful. Don't make it so long that that you're going to lose the interest of someone who wants to comment on it. But you will not be penalized to having a longer version of your post, as long as you have something to say. And of course, that's very important. But the what I'm looking for are material and your opinions concerning the lectures of the week. Now, there's some week only have one lecture, which is a little easier to comment on and to make your opinions on. But some have two, and when you have that, then you have to make sure that you include both of them, okay? Then you have a response to a fellow student's initial post. It must be at least 100 words. Now, your student response should add an idea, source, or other information to the fellow student's post. You can't just put a post on there that says, hey, really good job. And first of all, that doesn't hit the word count, and that's not academic. This is an undergrad class that we want to talk academically. If you find something in the lecture itself that you'd like to comment on that they brought up, I have no problem with that. But remember, it's your idea and a source that you have, that being the lecture, or if you want to bring in an outside source to pad your argument, I have no problem with that too. However, if you bring in an outside source other than the lectures, you must tell me where it came from. I need an author, name of the article or book, and publisher, okay? If you quote someone, I need to know who you're quoting. So at the bottom of your discussion, you need to make sure that you give a parenthetical footnote and where it came from, okay? This is important because I'll be running your comments or your discussions and your student posts through SafeAssign. If I find out that you basically plagiarize someone else's thoughts, it's deadly, okay? It's very deadly to you, and you don't want that. So make sure that your thoughts are your thoughts, and if you bring in someone else's thoughts, not a problem. Give them credit for it, okay? Also, you may respectfully disagree with your fellow student's post. I don't have a problem with that. But you better back it up with a position with evidence from the lectures, not an outside source, because you are commenting on what your fellow student said about the lecture. But if you disagree, say, well, you know what, I don't believe you in this, or, well, that's not academic speech, but you want to clean it up. I disagree with your post on this item, but let me tell you why. And then when you do that, you've brought in what I want as the information for your disagreement with your fellow student, okay? Also know, there will be no offensive speech. It will not be tolerated on your post or on your student's response. Any offensive speech by a student will result in a 0 for the discussion, okay? I will not tolerate that. We are fellow classmates in an academic situation. We're going to speak, talk, and act academically, not like street people, okay? You can do whatever you want when you're out of this class, but you need to know that I will be paying attention to people who are getting too personal, and I will nip that in the bud with the grading. Okay? All right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now here we have the discussion grading rubric. This is what I'll be using to grade your discussion and your student response. This is your only subjective grade in this class, so you need to be aware of what I'm looking for. Now, it's not terribly complicated. I have seen rubrics that when I was in my undergrad and in my master's, and right now I'm in my PhD program, and some of the rubrics are like, oh, geez, Louise, you're a little bit more in depth than I was expecting. But this is very self-explanatory. I'm going to let you go through it on your own and notice. One thing I should bring up is that on the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth row down where it's in red, that is the response, your student response grading for the rubric. Notice that the points are different and the criteria is different. Just a little bit, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. But you should read this, you should go over it, and know when you get a grade what happened. And if you ever want to dispute it, if you feel like you've been done wrong, contact me and we'll talk about it. Okay? All right. Well, that concludes this week 2 overview. You should be aware of everything going on this week. If you're not, please don't hesitate to contact me, okay? Now, this has been a lot. I'm getting a sugar Jones, so I'm going to have a donut, but I think you should too. You've done a lot of work, and you deserve a donut, okay? All right, everybody, have a great week. And as always, and I'm going to say this ad nauseum, if you have a problem or situation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Okay? Have a great week, everybody.